The worst thing we can do is forget God. When I heard that song, a few of the words just jumped out at me. And I'm going to read them to you. I'm not going to sing them for your goodness' sake, but I will read them to you. In the song it says, "Just a whisper of your voice can tame the seas. So who am I to try to take the lead? Still I run ahead and think I'm strong enough when you're the one who made me from the dust. When did I forget that you've always been the king of the world? I try to take life back right out of the hands of the king of the world. How could I make you so small when you're the one that holds it all? When did I forget that you've always been the king of the world?" As I was listening to that song, and Jessica played it for me the first time, and she's like, "Hey, have you heard this song? When did I forget?" And I was like, "If so, I forgot." She didn't think it was funny either. Okay. I just thought I'd try it again. But she played that song for me, and I listened and I heard those words, and I very quickly felt like God was asking me a question. I felt like God was asking, "Jeff, have you forgotten me?" I immediately got defensive. Like, of course not. I'm a youth pastor. I teach teenagers about you like every week. And I read my Bible, and sometimes I even pray before I eat my food. I haven't forgotten. I'm living a good Christian life here. And then I felt like God kind of said right back to me, yeah, you do that. But what about that trouble you're going through? What about that battle that you're fighting yourself? What about those people that you're counseling and you're trying to tell them the right way they should do it when I actually have the right way?" And I was immediately humbled, and I'm like, okay, you win. But that's what inspired this message, is that even I was at a place where I knew all about God, yet I was leaving him completely out of my life. See, there's one thing to know about God. It's a whole other thing to actually know God. I'll tell my youth all the time that I believe I grew up agnostic. Simply, I knew about Jesus. I knew who Jesus was, but I never once gave him my life. I never once made a decision according to his will or his word. I believe that for the long time I was a closet agnostic because I lived according to my own will and not God's. I had forgotten about God and left God out of my life. And I want to speak to that today, that if you're here today and you're facing something, or you have faced something, I want to ask the question. I apparently had those up there. When did I forget God? And you're probably like me, you're saying, "No, I haven't forgotten God. I come to church every Sunday or every holiday, and I know who God is. I know all about him. I've read the Bible. I've went to church." But do you actually know God? You see, there's a different thing in knowing about God and actually having a relationship with him. I can know everything I need to know about Jessica and be a terrible husband because I don't have a relationship with her. No, you see, you have to know about him, but then you have to enter into a relationship with him and live your life according to him. The same thing with your partner. I can know everything I need to know about her, but be a terrible husband because I don't live my life with her. You can know everything you need to know about God and be a terrible Christian because you don't live your life with him. So I ask the question, when did I forget God? Maybe it's not like that. Maybe you just went through something, and maybe you just fought a battle that no one here knows about, and no one here can believe how much you've endured, and you prayed and you begged and you pleaded with God to help you get through it, but he was nowhere to be found. I've been there. And now you're going through this trial. You're forgetting all about God because he didn't do anything last time. He wasn't there for you last time. He didn't help you get through it last time. Why would he this time? Maybe you're there. Guys, tragedy does funny things to our minds. It does funny things to us. It makes us believe and doubt, and it makes us go through some terrible things and say some terrible things. But tragedy affects all of us differently. I'm going to read to you guys in 1 Samuel 4 today about some guys that are going through some terrible stuff. And I'll give you just a little bit of background so you know where it falls in the timeline. This is during the war with the Israelites and the Philistines. This is prior to David and Goliath. This is pretty early on in the war that's going to last many years to come. So in 1 Samuel 4, it says, "At that time, Israel was at war with the Philistines. The Israelite army was camped near Ebenezer, and the Philistines were at Aphek. The Philistines attacked and defeated the army of Israel, killing 4,000 men. After the battle was over, the troops retreated to their camp, and the elders of Israel asked, 'Why did the Lord allow us to be defeated by the Philistines?' Then they said, 'Let's bring the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord from Shiloh. If we carry it into battle with us, it will save us from our enemies.'" There's a couple of things I pick up when I immediately read this. First, they go through this tragic event, and what do they say when they get back to camp? After they run away with their tails between their legs and they get back to camp, the first thing they ask is, "Why, God? Why did you allow this to happen to us? Why did you leave us? Why did you forsake us? Why did you allow this terrible tragedy to inflict itself on our lives? We lost 4,000 men. Why, God?" Have you ever had a why, God moment? I've had a few where I didn't understand. And I questioned, and I doubted, and I struggled. Why, God, would you allow this to happen? And we see the very next thing they do is they go to the Ark of the Covenant, which was their prized possession. And it's supposed to contain, the power of God, but they go to this physical thing, this physical artifact. They go to it for its power. Guys, can I tell you that I completely and totally believe this is the literal, physical, divinely inspired Word of God. The Bible is the most amazing book by the most amazing storyteller in the universe. But if we put our faith in the paper and not the one it's about, we'll be let down every time. You see, they went to the Ark of the Covenant, and they thought that the Ark of the Covenant would save them. They thought taking this stone into battle would protect them. You see, it's much easier to put your faith in a physical object that you can see, feel, and touch because, well, let's be honest, it doesn't take much faith to believe that this table is right here. Right? It's a whole other thing to put your faith in the God that you can't see. Paul says in 2 Corinthians 4:18, "So we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but on what is unseen, since what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal." What is unseen is eternal. Guys, I want to say, when you are facing the trials, the fires, the oceans of life, and when the problems seem to overwhelm you, you can't put your faith in a physical object or in a person. You can't put your faith on anything that you can actually see. It has to go on what is unseen, because he who is unseen is the only thing that is eternal. He's the only one with the power to get you through what you're going through. Okay, so we have the Israelites grabbing their Ark of the Covenant, their prized possession, heading into battle against the Philistines. What happens? So the Philistines fought desperately, and Israel was defeated again. The slaughter was great. 30,000 Israelite soldiers died that day. The survivors turned and fled to their tents. The ark of God was captured, and Hophni and Phinehas, the two sons of Eli, were killed. This is a bad day. They went back to war. They lost 30,000 more men, including Hophni and Phinehas, the sons of the judge of Israel, basically the king at the time. And then news gets back to the king, and it says that he falls over, breaks his neck, and dies. Dude, this is a bad day. You lost 30,000 men. Your king died. The heirs to the throne died, and you lost the Ark of the Covenant. Who thinks that in this moment, the Israelites felt like they were defeated? Don't you think that they felt like God had completely abandoned them? That God was no longer there with them? That God was no longer for them? That in this moment, in this problem, in this fight, that God had left them all alone? Have you ever felt like that? That you've been going through something, and you have prayed, and you have begged, and you have pleaded with God to take it away. and he doesn't, and it happens, and you go through it. I know I was there when my mom was sick, and just before she passed away. I remember just being at my lowest point and thinking, God has completely left me. I remember begging God and pleading with God, and I remember making deals with him. I went through all the 5 stages of grief, and I remember saying, God, no one thinks she's going to make it. If you just showed off a little bit and you brought her back to life, everyone in this hospital would know you were real. Trying to make deals with God, Have you ever been there? Because I know that while I was there, while I was in that moment, I could not see God. See, my vision was obstructed by my pain. And when all you can see is your pain and all you can see is your situation and the things directly in front of you, you'll never see the hand of God acting in your life. You'll never see what God is actually doing behind the scenes when all you can see is your pain. But God hasn't left you. God promises to never leave you and never forsake you. So I want to ask the next question. When did I forget God's character? When did I forget God's character? It says in Isaiah, do you not know? Have you not heard? The Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. He will not grow tired or weary, and his understanding no one can fathom. He gives strength. I got a little ahead of myself. He gives strength to the weary and increases the power of the weak. Even youths grow tired and weary, and young men stumble and fall. But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. And again it says in Exodus 14:14, the Lord will fight for you. You need only be still. The Lord will fight for you. You need only be still. You see, the Israelites, they felt like God had abandoned them. They felt like they were defeated, that the Philistines had won, and that there was no coming back, that God had left the people of Israel. They were all on their own. They were down a king, heirs, 35,000, and lost the Ark of the Covenant, the single power of God. They were beaten. Have you ever felt beaten? That you're going through something and you can't overcome it, and it has completely defeated you, and it felt like God's power has completely left you, that God's presence no longer with you. Because I want to tell you what happens next. You see, the story doesn't end with 35,000 dead, the king, the heirs, the Ark of the Covenant gone. The story doesn't end in 1 Samuel 4. Who's thankful that God never ends the story while the enemy has the lead? God always knows what's coming, and God always puts action. You see, the Philistines thought they'd won too. They were celebrating. They actually took the Ark of the Covenant of God and they put it at the feet of their statue God. They were trying to make the God of Israel, our God, bow down to their God. When they left the room, they came back to find their statue flat on its face and the Ark of God standing upright. They repeated the process. Same thing. The statue flat on its face. Guys, God will never bow to the gods of this earth. Our God is the God of all gods. He's the God. He's the King of kings and Lord of lords. He will not submit to the gods of this earth. But the coolest thing happens. That while the Ark of the Covenant is in the big city of Philistino, whatever. While the Ark of the Covenant is in this city, he starts to inflict plagues on that city. And so they get scared and they send the Ark of the Covenant to one of their other cities. And again, plagues and thousands die. And they send it to another city and plagues and thousands die and plagues. And they keep sending it from city to city. You see, the whole time the Israelites thought that God had left them, that God had abandoned them, that God had given up on them, when the whole time God was in the enemy camp fighting on their behalf. He was weakening the numbers of the Philistines so that the next time they go to battle, it would be an equal fight. Guys, when you feel like God is no longer with you, like God is no longer in your presence, like God has left you and he has forsaken you and he has left you to fight this battle alone, it's very well possible he's in the camp of your enemy fighting on your behalf. You may not see him because he's fighting battles you can't see, but he's never left you. That's not his character. His character is that he loves his children, that he is a good, good father, and that he is forever with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you, that he loves his children. more than we can ever imagine. He didn't leave the Israelites. He went to fight the battle on their behalf. He went to fight the battle they couldn't accomplish. He loved them so much, he fought on their behalf. So I want to ask my next question. When did I forget God's love? When did I forget God's love? Like I said moments ago, it's easy to do. It's easy to forget God's love when all you can see is your pain. When all you can see and all you can focus on is that loss or that grief or that struggle or that temptation or that pain, when all you can see is what is right in front of you, it's easy to forget the love of God that's in work in your life. You see, because we look at God and we say, Father, I thought you were going to protect us. You know, in fact, this reminds me of just the other day, London just turned 12. If you're new here and you don't know London, she's my, she didn't turn 12, goodness. She's my 1-year-old daughter. She turned 12 months old. I butchered that one. Okay, so if you don't know London, little bitty thing, adorable. But she just turned 12 months, so we had to take her to her 12-month doctor's appointment. Now, parents, you know what that means. Shots, right? She's got to go get shots. But that wasn't the worst part. She handled the shots like a champ. Like they stuck her like 4 times, no problem. Whimpered for a second, but she was good. But they had to do something new. They had never done this before. They had to draw blood. Now, I don't know if you've ever seen the way they draw blood from a baby, but they poke their little finger and they squeeze out something like a gallon of blood. It's a terrible thing they do. It's torturous. I don't know who licensed this stuff. But they poke her finger, and she's good. I'm like, she's a champ, dude. She's not even worried about it. But then they start squeezing on her finger to get this blood out. They got to fill this tube. It's like this long. It's stupid. Okay. Then they start squeezing her finger, and hard, and like blood is pulling up. And you see, like the first couple of times, she's just in shock. She's like, what is going on here? Daddy, what are you letting them do to me? And after a minute or so, after a couple squeezes, you see these tears just fill her eyes. And her eyes get glossy and big old tears, like big person tears fill her eyes. And then she looks at Jessica and I, and she just lets out these tears and starts to cry. And the whole time she's looking at us while we're having to hold her hand while they squeeze her finger, the whole time she's crying and these big tears would come out. And she's staring at us, and I can almost hear her saying, Daddy, I thought you were supposed to protect me. Daddy, don't you see that this woman is hurting me? It was terrible. And finally, she got to a point where she quit fighting with her hand. She quit trying to get her hand back. Instead, she just wrapped her arm around our necks. And she just clung to us and cried, and we cried, and the nurses cried, and we just all bawled there in that room. But she gave up, and she just clung to us with all she had. Guys, who do you think that hurt more? Her or us? That was a question. Us, yeah, it did. It hurt us a whole lot more than it hurt her. But we knew it was necessary. You see, parents, you understand this because you have kids, and you've taken your kids for shots, and you've taken your kids for surgeries, and you've taken your kids to the dentist, and you've taken your kids to have their blood drawn, that they don't get it, right? They don't understand why this is happening to them. They don't understand why they have to go through this, and why mommy and daddy's not getting them out of it, and why mommy and daddy's not saving them. But see, we have the information. We know that they need the shots because it's going to protect them. We know that they need the blood drawn so the doctors can tell us if they're healthy. We know they need the surgeries and the dental appointments, and they just don't get it. Guys, with God, the situation's reversed. God is the good Father. He is a great Father, and He sees you in your pain, and He sees you in your trial, and He sees you in your hurt, and He knows what you're going through. And He's just like any good parent. He hates to see you going through it. He hates to see you enduring. He hates to see you struggling. And I bet He's up there weeping with you when you weep. But He knows, He has the information that what you're going through will ultimately be for your good. In Romans 8:28, He says that He'll work together all things for the good of those who love Him. All things He'll work together for the good of those who love Him. He is a good Father. Just like it hurts us to see our babies get hurt, it hurts Him. but we know that it's for their good. And he knows whatever it is you're going through will be worked together for good. And you don't see it right now. I know you don't. I've been there. You don't see it in the trial. You don't see it when you're looking at the pain. You don't see it when you're in the situation. All you see is your pain and a missing God. You see a missing Father, and you're sitting there saying the same things. God, I read in the Bible, you said you would protect me. You said that you would deliver me from this. Where are you? And he's looking at you saying, I've never left. I can't just pull you out of the situation because that situation's needed to grow you. But I'll never leave you. I'll be right here with you through it all. I'll be with you. When you go through the pain, I'll go through it with you. When you cry, I'll weep with you. When we're in that situation and when we're facing pain that we can't understand and we're facing situations that we just don't understand and we can't get through it, we can't understand it, and we can't overcome it ourselves, we take the posture of London. Because London finally gave up the fight. And she simply put her arm around her father. And we weep together. That when you are stuck and you can't go any further, you simply cling to Jesus and weep together. You trust Jesus to be with you while you get through it. He may not pull you out of it and do what you necessarily want, but he'll get you through it. I'm going to end with this passage. It says, "Fear not, for I have redeemed you. I have called you by name. You are mine. When you pass through the waters, I will be with you. And through the rivers, they shall not overwhelm you. When you walk through the fire, you shall not be burned, and the flame shall not consume you." I want to notice a couple things about that passage. I'm going to jump back. It says, when you pass through the water. Who wishes that verse just said, when you walk on top of the water, like ain't nothing going to bother you? It doesn't say that. It says, when you pass through the water. Guys, we're going to pass through some waters. We're going to face some trials and some pains. And next it says, when you walk through the fire. I wish it said, when you walk around the fire. Right, it's going to get hot, but not too hot. It says you're going to walk through the fire. But what's the promise? The promise is this: I will be with you. He's not left you. He's not forsaken you. He's not given up on you. He didn't give up on the Israelites. He fought on their behalf. And they would go on to win the war. And guys, whatever you're going through right now, you can't see the end of the story. We see this and we have faith in the Bible because we see the end of the story. You don't know the end of your story, but he does. And I promise you, he won't end the story while the enemy has the lead. He will redeem you and he will be with you all the days of your life. And whatever you're going through, he hasn't left you. He may be out fighting on your behalf, but everything he's doing is for you because he's a good father. He's a good father and he loves you. No matter where you are, no matter what you've done, your Father in heaven adores you. You're never too far gone. You've never messed up too badly. You've never committed too many sins. You've never made too many mistakes. God loves you. You'll never be outside of the love of God because he is a loving Father and he loves his children no matter what. And if you feel like you're lost today and that God is too far out of reach and God has left you and God doesn't want anything to do with you because you've just messed up too much, I want to promise you that that's not true. It says in Scripture that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. Jesus didn't wait for you to become perfect. Jesus didn't wait for you to repent. Jesus didn't wait for you to quit sinning. Jesus didn't wait for you to quit messing up. That while you were still a sinner, while he knew every mistake, every struggle, every temptation you would succumb to, while he knew all these things, he loved you enough to give his life up for you. I tell my students all the time, and if they're here, I'm sure they're tired of hearing it, that when Jesus went to the cross, they hung him on a tree. They put nails through his hands. Ultimately, they put a spear into his side, and they mocked him and they humiliated him. They tortured him in the most torturous death possible. Guys, I want to tell you that it was not the wood, it was not the steel, it was not the power of the Roman soldiers, it was not the mockery, it was not human power and human will that kept Jesus on that cross. That was simply never enough. He is the God of God, the Lord of Lords, the King of Kings. He could have been off that cross and sitting with his Father in heaven in a moment. In a single thought, in a single breath, he could have been off commanding an army of thousands of angels. There was no power here on earth that could have kept Jesus on that cross except love. Don't forget God's love. The only thing that kept Jesus on that cross is his love for you. He loved you so much that he endured this pain, the torture, the mockery, and he gave up his life for you because he loves you that much. Don't ever think he left you. He'll never leave you. He'll always be right by your side. When you don't know what else to do, cling to Jesus.